Hey everyone, it's Kyle Langan, founder of HamptonsToHollywood.com, and after a little hiatus, the podcast is back. Of course, I'm super excited to share a lot more stories from the Hamptons and Hollywood about people and issues that are relevant, fun, and make you think. This week, I sat down with my good friend Elissa, who is a recovering alcoholic. We talked about her powerful story and battle with alcoholism. She bravely opened up about how she entered Alcoholics Anonymous, a few of the major tools she's taken from the program, and how everyone, fundamentally, is the same, whether they're in AA or not. We even talked about my own experience in AA. It's no secret that Hamptons to Hollywood glamorizes alcohol consumption. I mean, we even had a champagne brunch pop-up at Bagatelle, Los Angeles a few years back, if you had forgotten. So it was really interesting and important to see the flip side of how addiction can be debilitating. I think you'll learn a lot from our conversation today. I know I certainly did. So, here we go. Elissa.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being on the Hamptons to Hollywood podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So, this is a really exciting and really interesting subject today that we're going to be talking about. I just want to start off by saying that, and thank you for being so, willing and vulnerable and, able to talk about this, because I know it can be, really tricky. So, we're going to talk today about alcoholism and being in AA.
Yes.
So, let me just ask you this. How long would you say that you've been an alcoholic?
I think I was born an alcoholic. I think I was born with alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are not sure if it's a disease or not, but the book that we read does tell us that it is a disease, and I've came to believe that there's really no other plausible explanation for why I acted the way I acted when I drank.
Yeah.
Or why I took a drink in the first place.
What is the book?
The book is the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and this is the guidelines that we live our life by. There's a lot of different parts to it, but it's basically the first 165 pages are explaining to us why we are alcoholics, or if we are, discovering if you are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are, then you do certain things in order to make your life manageable and live in a spiritual manner.
That's amazing. Would you tell me a story just really quickly about what kind of the situation that brought you to rehab or AA?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. So, I don't know. I mean,
I guess just start with the most recent one.
The most recent one? Okay.
When I saw you.
Yeah, so the one that brought me to Long Beach AA,
right,
actually, was a night where I was out drinking. And
with me.
With you, and with a bunch of people that drink, were drinking a lot less than me. And something I do notice now is that when I see people drinking, I'm like, oh my God, I would have had 5 glasses of wine in the time span that you had 2.
Right.
And that night I drove, which I put myself at risk.
Can we just say that you were on a bad date?
I was on a bad date, but there's no need to drive.
Yeah. I know, it's not an excuse, but it was compounded on top of...
Yeah.
Anyway.
But life happens, and people go on bad dates all the time, and they don't get arrested for DUIs.
Right.
So...
Touché.
So I drove, and I was very, very drunk, and I got arrested, and I
pulled over out of the blue, or did you go through a checkpoint?
No, I hit a cone.
Oh.
On 3rd Street, and I hit a cone, and it got stuck to my tire. And and there was a cop pulling someone else over on the side of the road, and they saw me, and they pulled me over, and I guess asked if I was okay, and then they immediately smelled the alcohol on me because I reeked, and I got arrested, and it was terrifying, and they were not nice, and I always thought they would be nice because I never been arrested, and I don't know, I didn't know, and I was very, very scared. And then I got in the jail cell, and really I wanted to just call someone like my mom or my dad,
mm-hmm,
and the phone wouldn't work. So they were like, yeah, I don't know why it's not working. It wasn't working because I was calling New Jersey.
Oh.
You can only call local, which I didn't know that. And so I just became very I just couldn't sit there by myself. I was alone by myself for
Yeah.
hours. You know, I couldn't do it. And I told them I was going to kill myself. So I was like, I'm going to kill myself. So they would send me to a psych ward. Because I knew I would get like some Xanax there and I'd be able to go to sleep and it'd be comfy.
Wow.
Because I've been to a psych ward before. So I know what it's like.
That's so, yeah.
So I manipulated them.
System, yeah.
Yeah. And ended up in the psych ward, but got 5150, which is the first time that's happened to me. Which means basically that someone put you in there and because you are suicidal and you can't leave until a doctor releases you. So you have to be there for at least 72 hours, which is what they let me do because the doctor can tell that I was pretty sane. But I was in there and I was just like, I do not want this to happen to me. And I'm done with going to institutions. I'm done with going to rehabs. I just want to get whatever's going to help. And I didn't know what that was at the time. And someone reached out to me that I knew from a family friend, told me about a rehab, and I went there. I took a medical leave off work, went there for 3 months, went back to work after 2 months, stayed in sober living for 8 months, and that's what I've been doing.
Wow.
But, yeah, so it was scary.
You were kind enough to take me to an AA meeting last night.
Yes.
And it was my first AA meeting, and it
Yes.
was really, it was so, like, captivating and enthralling because you were hearing, well, I was just struck by a lot of things, and which we'll get into, but I guess firstly, like, describe to me, because you were kind of saying that there's definitely a correlation between being a recovering alcoholic and religion, or spirituality, I guess I should
Spirituality.
say.
Yeah.
So,
totally different than religion.
can you explain that?
Yeah, so, okay. Anyone of any sect, denomination, religious group can join AA. You can have your religion, and it's separate from your spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Spirituality is completely its own thing. You could only have spirituality and no religion if you want.
Yeah.
Which is basically what I'm at. Spirituality, though, is basically just knowing that there is a higher power that has your best interest at heart, regardless of what is coming your way, and trusting that it does and that everything is going to turn out the way it's supposed to.
So it's kind of like a safety net that kind of says, oh, like, you don't have to do this alone, basically.
Yes, yeah, you never have to do anything alone.
Because there's a higher power that you can always turn to. That is...
And I think the difference between religion and spirituality is that spirituality is supposed to be always a loving, caring God or higher power, whatever you want to call it, universe, whatever, the ocean, the wind, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And religion sometimes can be shameful or
Right.
shaming.
So I don't know if you know any of the statistics of, like, being in AA. So we went to our meeting in Long Beach, California.
Yes.
And everyone there was pretty much white.
Yeah, in that meeting, yes.
Is that common?
It depends on where you go to meetings and what meetings you go to.
Okay.
The Long Beach meetings are actually it's generally white people that do come from like upper middle class families. I went to a lot of meetings in New Jersey where like I couldn't really relate to their backgrounds,
Right.
or where they came from, and it was harder for me to identify as an alcoholic
Right.
because of that, because I was separating myself.
So it's better to kind of be around like-minded, or like
Sometimes,
people
and then
sometimes.
eventually, once you have a strong program, it's good to reach out to whoever needs help, because that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's not about separating, it's about coming together.
Right.
But I think it's hard for people at first to identify as alcoholics if they're not homeless, or if they come from a good, like a wealthy family, or if they are in college, because like I fall under all those categories.
Yeah.
Like I got my master's and I have a good job, and those things sometimes they're not
Correlate
with alcoholism. Yeah, especially in movies and social media, and the old identification of alcoholic.
Yeah.
So I think when I was able to realize that people that were similar to me in my background felt the same way that I did and acted the same way that I did when they took a drink, it was easier for me to identify as an alcoholic.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
One of the things that I also thought was really interesting, and just because I don't know the vernacular, but like last night at the meeting there was 2 guys who were celebrating like years of being sober, and they still say that they're alcoholics, and
Yes.
that is can you explain why that is? That because that it could be a disease, and that's you're always afflicted with it, no matter how many years sober you are.
Yes. So if it was something that if you were an alcoholic and then you stopped drinking and you were no longer an alcoholic, then you wouldn't need the program to stay sober. Then you wouldn't need the steps. You wouldn't need the 12 steps. You wouldn't need a spiritual program.
Right.
You wouldn't need the fellowship. You wouldn't need the service work. Service, unity, and recovery are the 3 parts of the triangle of AA.
Service, unity, and recovery.
Yeah. And you wouldn't need those 3 things if you were all of a sudden no longer an alcoholic.
Right.
So alcoholism is actually the way we think. It's our perception. We have a perception problem. It's not just about drinking or using. Some people say they are recovered alcoholics, but recovering alcoholic is, like, if you wanted to be more specific. Most people identify as alcoholic their whole lives. Even if they have 25 years, 35 years, whatever, sober.
This was a common theme from last night, but I was very impressed by the vulnerability that was there.
Yeah, that's just a big part of AA.
Huge, like, people, like, just, not huge people, but people just, like, hugely saying, like, oh my God, like, this is, like, the woman last night, she was saying, like, oh, I just, like, wanted to throw my daughter through a window. And obviously everyone feels like that sometimes.
Yeah.
But we have trouble, I think, owning it and just and expressing it and whatever. Describe your kind of, I guess, relationship with vulnerability.
People that are in Alcoholics Anonymous and go to meetings regularly and work a program tend to be way more vulnerable, open to their emotions in general. I go to a meeting called No Secrets. So secrets keep us sick is something that we say. So if we have something that we're holding inside and we're not sharing it with another human, it tends to eat us up, you know? And things like when you share about something that you're feeling, even if you feel ashamed about it, like, I want to throw my daughter through a window, like, that's something that you wouldn't want to say out loud because you feel ashamed by saying that, because you're not supposed to feel that way by society standards. And someone else comes up to you and says, I want to feel that way. I feel that way too sometimes.
Right.
You no longer feel alone. And that's the whole point of being vulnerable in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's about being vulnerable and having another person come up to you and tell you that you're not alone. I felt that way too. And I got through it. And this is how I got through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were 3 points that really stuck with me, and they were vulnerability, judgment, and shame.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about them more in depth later, but I think just kind of like being vulnerable and then also not having like judgment about what's being said.
Yeah.
And then also not feeling shame about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you more vulnerable now than you were?
Absolutely.
And is that were you drinking to kind of numb?
Absolutely.
And do you think that's common?
I think it's extremely common.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think that's almost every alcoholic that I know was drinking to not feel the way they're feeling.
So why, I guess, like, just understanding, I guess, like, why the psychology of that, like, why?
Yeah. Every single thing that I've heard in AA has resonated with me. One thing is, like, 1 is too many, 1,000 never enough to fill a hole. And that's something that's, like, another common thing that we talk about. When I was young, I had a lot of anxiety and depression, and a lot of my issues were fear-based. I've learned that since being in Alcoholics Anonymous, a lot of people in there had similar experiences to me.
Yeah.
They had a lot of fear of unknown, and they just couldn't be okay with the way things were at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's for me. That's specifically how I felt. And since I was always so worried about the future or reflecting on the past, I was never in the present. I wanted to drink because it slowed me down. It allowed me to be in the present for a minute. And then I just wanted more. And because I never felt as good as I was going to feel.
Because you were anxious?
Yeah, anxiety, depression, but mostly just fear. Like, fear is fear is the basis of most anxiety and depression. And I think people that don't even have alcoholism necessarily have, they have fear-based, thoughts. But for me, it was debilitating. My grandfather and my uncle are both alcoholics. So I do know that there is technically a genetic factor. I don't know exactly what that is. I know that there's still a lot of, it's up in the air. As a scientist, I really want to know the genetics behind it.
Yeah. But
me trying to figure that out keeps me in my disease. It keeps me an alcoholic because it separates me. I need to have faith.
Right.
And then the more faith I have, the less fear I have. That's why I don't think about it too much.
Right. That's interesting. Sorry to bring it up. So it's just interesting that the mechanism that you use to escape is something that,
Substance.
yeah, and that keeps you like detached almost until you do a complete 180 and end up in AA where you have to be so completely
Right. Vulnerable.
in it.
Yeah.
When you have had a relapse, which is common, I would think.
Yeah.
So can you like explain, if you would, the circumstances surrounding?
Yeah. It's something I don't fully understand either. But so I had about a year and a half sober, which was the longest that I've ever had sober.
So great.
It's hard because that's what I want to go to when I'm having a really tough week, you
Right.
know? When I'm feeling inside like lost and confused, like I want to shut my brain off and I want to relax. Yeah, and I want relief.
So what do you do now that you're sober in those situations?
Well, I have tools that I'm supposed to use, and that's what I try to use now.
Can you tell us what those are?
Yeah, so some meditation is a big one. Meditation is part of our 12 steps. One of the last steps. Meditation, reading, reaching out to another alcoholic. That's the main part of unity in the 3 parts of the triangle.
Yeah.
It's reaching out to an alcoholic that has a lot of time, or reaching out to an alcoholic that has less time than you, sober. And
oh, interesting.
yeah, and also people that that your sober support group, calling them, telling
and saying
them,
like, hey, like I'm
hey,
feeling...
I want to drink. Yeah, hey, I like just even that. Hey, I want to drink, and then it's like, okay, I've had my friends like stop and be like, all right, talk to me about it.
Yeah.
You know, and like there's always someone that's going to be there for you.
So why, when you did relapse, why was that not in the forefront?
Why didn't I call them?
Yeah.
I know. I don't know the answer. I really like blacked out. Like I from when I decided that I was gonna have a drink that night, and until the next morning when I woke up and was hungover, I don't remember my decision making process. I kind of didn't have one. Like,
did you feel like, so when you committed to having a drink?
yeah, like in like seconds.
Right. And
Yeah.
so like you were like, okay, like you have the conviction to like go to the bar and
Yeah.
like, get a glass of wine or whatever. Like, so you don't really, so that's interesting. It's like
Yeah.
you don't remember it.
Not really. I mean, I remember like,
It's probably because it's traumatic and you
Yeah.
blacked it out.
Yeah.
You blocked it out.
probably, and that's why a lot of people go to treatment at first, because then you don't have that option in treatment.
And you've been to treatment.
Yeah, I have, and I'm not going this time. I'm doing the because I learned what I need to learn from treatment.
Sure.
But it is something I would consider if I couldn't stop drinking. You know, living with sober women and having everyone around me basically being sober, it makes it a lot easier for me to take that off the table as an option. I really don't know. I just kind of, it's like 1 minute I was at work, and the next thing I knew. I mean, not like exactly, but I woke up the next day and I was hungover, and I was telling everyone that I had to call my sponsor, I had to call my mom. I told everyone,
So when you do drink, or when you did drink,
Yeah.
it's like, describe it.
I just get like a bottle of wine, and I want to drink that, and I'm like, I'm going to drink that like a normal person. I'm going to have 2 glasses of wine, and then next thing I know, within 15 minutes, I'm done with that bottle of wine, and I'm buying another.
Yeah. So it's just 0
Until
to
I pass
8.
out.
Right.
So it's until I fall asleep.
So
Yeah.
if you had 1 glass of wine,
Yeah, in a controlled room.
right,
Sounds awful. That sounds worse than having none.
being in AA, you would have to like start
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
over again,
Yeah.
even though it's 1 glass of wine.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's program is really up to them, but yeah, for me it is. And also, I would never have 1 glass of wine, which is why I'm in the program.
Right.
So,
Right.
and if you can have 1 glass of wine, maybe this is other issues.
Right. So one of the things that they were talking about last night was the gift of desperation.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
They were saying basically like you are so desperate that you have to join AA.
Right.
And ultimately that's the gift.
Yeah.
Like, that's how to get like their life back on track.
Right.
Did you feel
Yeah.
like
Oh my God,
that?
I felt desperate so many times. Since I have the knowledge that I have of Alcoholics Anonymous, I had that year of sobriety, I know that there's a better life than drinking for me. And I know that like my life is either going to be one way, and that looks like potentially a great career, a family, love, friends, all this stuff, or it looks isolated and alone and I'm drinking and that's all I care about.
We were actually kind of just talking about this. You were saying, when you first get out of, like, rehab, like, you're super horny.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, you have to kind of... I mean, you have an addictive personality, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you're replacing that urge to drink with sex, or you're replacing it with
shopping,
eating or shopping or whatever.
Gambling.
So, do you think that addicts, when you take away one thing from them, they will, no matter what, like...
Yeah.
Be addicted to something else eventually?
Not no matter what. If you work the program and the steps...
It helps you not be addicted?
Well, the thing that we say is that we have a God-sized hole in our soul that we try to fill with things, and it's like fitting a square peg in a round hole. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that is going to make us feel complete is having a relationship with a higher power.
Wow.
And helping another person.
Yeah.
And it's really about... Those are the two things. Having higher power, helping another human being.
Wow. So that brings us into sponsorship.
Yes.
So can you be, like, what are the requirements?
Usually you wait a year of sobriety to be a sponsor.
So could you be one now since you have had a year under your belt?
No. I mean, I could, I guess technically, but no.
But you mean like a current
You're supposed to have a working knowledge of the 12 steps. So you're supposed to have worked all 12 steps.
Okay.
And,
so I couldn't be a sponsor?
No.
Because I'm not... Oh, wow.
I mean, you can't... There's no rules. It's not, like... But
I couldn't really relate
No,
to...
and also you'd have nothing to give because you haven't learned any... You've gone through the book. It's taking another person through the book that's never been through the book. Or needs to go through the book again.
Right.
Like, when I meet with my sponsor, we read... I read a page, she reads a page, I read a page, she reads a page.
Do you ever... I mean, this is going to sound horrible, but do you ever get bored?
Every time I read it, I learn something different.
Really?
Yeah.
Even in your meetings, or do you get bored?
Yeah.
You go to a lot of them.
I know. I need it so bad. I think that's probably the gift of desperation, that I need it so bad that I don't right now. I don't really get bored right now.
That's amazing.
I know. But it's because I need it to
right.
I want to live,
Right.
People that have 5-10 years, I'm sure they get bored. Mm-hmm. But then they go out and they help another person, and that gives them hope that they, that it's working.
One of the things that I recognized, that I felt almost like so weak in comparison to a lot of the people that were there.
That's crazy.
Yesterday, because I don't feel like I could have that discipline. I mean, and also it's because I don't really need to have that discipline, right?
Yeah.
But maybe that's why I'm not an alcoholic, is because I don't know if I could be, like, it's so, I just don't know if I could, I don't know.
If you're desperate enough, then you'll do anything. And that's what they say, it says, like, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. You gotta think about it this way, you've never been sitting in a corner of a room wanting to die, and, like, nothing will help you not feel that way, know? Or been homeless, or prostituting yourself, or any, most of these people, these are things that they've gone through.
Yeah.
Like, I have used alcohol and drugs to the point where I honestly wanted, like, I can't explain to you how bad it felt. Like, crawling out of my skin, like, wanting to die. So, like, wanting to live, you are desperate to do anything.
That's a good way to... I've never thought about it like that. Yeah,
it's hard to explain. That's why it's so hard for people to understand it, that aren't afflicted with it.
Yeah.
But which is why we have each other.
Going back really quickly to judgment, it's hard to be judgmental when you hear other people's stories, because you're going through the same thing, right? So, okay, so let's just say, like, you're sitting in the room, like I was sitting there, and like, some stories are more captivating than others, for sure.
Captivating.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you're like, oh god, like, the content of this story, like, is not, it's easy, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm judgmental, but, like,
no,
it's easy to, like, judge, like, oh, well, your alcoholism, not saying that I did this, but your alcoholism isn't as
severe,
powerful as this person.
Gotcha.
So, do you know what I'm saying? So, but it's hard. You can't make that judgment when you're an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I mean, you shouldn't make that judgment no matter what, but when you're an alcoholic, because we're all going through the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So when people tell their stories, like, it's good to explain how they felt in that moment, because regardless of if you were just in your mansion detoxing, or if you were on the streets of, Skid Row, you had the same feelings.
Right.
you know? And
yeah, exactly. Fundamentally,
yeah,
it's all the same.
It's all the same. It's the feeling of I can't stop and I need help and I want to survive and I can't survive on my own.
Yeah.
Once you realize that, your judgment lessens. And my mom asked me, she's like, you would have never done like hard drugs, right? Like heroin or meth. And I'm like, honestly, Mom, I don't know. It was never put in front of me.
Right.
And if it was, and it helped, it gave me an opportunity to not feel the way I was feeling, maybe I would have. Yeah. Like, that's not part of my story. But it could be if I continue drinking, you know? The what ifs or yets are things, that's another thing that people say in Alcoholics Anonymous. I haven't done heroin or prostituted or anything yet. Yeah. You know? But people...
Because there's a risk.
Yeah.
It made me think, what are some things that I'm addicted to? Do you know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
And even if I'm not completely... I think we all have addictive traits.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, whether it's like in relationships or, you know, like why... Like, I thought I was...
Working out.
I was thinking about things that I had gone through, and I'm like, oh, wow, like, why did I not see what was so clear to everybody else? Do you know? And why couldn't I stop going back?
Right.
Yeah, it was just really eye-opening. And I think everyone should, like, go to an AA meeting.
Yeah, I think so too.
Important.
I think they should have be like a high school or college, like, requirement.
Oh my God. Can you just talk about emotional sobriety really quickly?
Oh, yeah, that's something I don't have yet. So
what is it?
To me, I don't really know. I'm learning about it still.
Because I'd never heard of it before.
Yeah, physical sobriety is not having days away from the drink. Emotional sobriety is something that they tell me happens in the second year. And maybe that's why the second year has been so hard for me.
Yeah. Because
emotional sobriety is a lot more difficult than just taking away the drink. It's not replacing the drink with emotion, with something else, with emotions, with a relationship, with being hard on yourself, with anything. To me, it's having balance and having emotional stability, which is hard for like anyone, but it's especially hard when you've used alcohol or drugs to mask your emotions your whole life and you don't know how to deal with them.
Yeah.
And that's like a big thing about AA in the first year. Like, it's sitting through hard emotions knowing that they're going to pass. You know, even if it feels like it's never gonna. Even if it feels like it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's gonna pass.
In Eat, Pray, Love, which is like one of my favorite things of all time, she says that no matter, like, everything passes.
Yeah.
Like, the good, the bad, the pain, the love, like everything, your life.
Yeah.
You know, everything.
The only constant is change.
Nothing lasts forever.
Right. Yeah, so it's sitting through that, but also, like, allowing yourself to feel your emotions and being gentle with yourself. Like, and not being hard on yourself. And that is, I am struggling with that currently. And I'm like, why am I like this? Then it's like, why am I like this? Like, I don't want to be like this. I want to be a strong woman, you know? And then you're just criticizing yourself, and that it's hard.
Yeah, you know, it just occurred to me that when I went to the therapist once, and he was like, when you have, like, feelings of, like, anxiety or whatever, like, you should just try and sit with the feeling.
I know, it sounds awful,
sit
right?
With the feeling.
I know. That's what they told us, too. It sounds awful, and it is awful.
But I guess it's important because the only way to move past it is to go through it.
And growth. Like, it's the only way for emotional growth is to know it, and then you can look back and say, I got through that feeling.
Right.
So if someone in your life passes, I got through that, I can get through this.
Right.
That's the only way, by experience. Because we don't learn by watching other people.
Yeah.
We learn, I mean, I personally, like, need to
go through it.
Yeah, I need to test the waters on everything before I learn it.
2 more things really quick.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Why is there so much shame? What you have gone through, like, no matter how bad, and yours, I think, was relatively low on, like, the bads. I mean, sorry, I shouldn't say that, but...
No, I know what you mean.
You weren't, like, a crack addict, like, living in a truck. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, and even if you were, like, that's just part of your story, right? So why is there shame? Is it a fear of being judged?
I think the shame, for me, is being like, look at these people, how come they can go through life and handle things without having to abuse alcohol or drugs, and I couldn't. And that's what it is for me.
Do you feel resentment toward people?
Yeah, absolutely, sometimes, for sure. I'm, like, totally jealous. I'm like, well, I want to be able to have a drink. I want to be able to not have to deal with these feelings.
That's so funny, because I remember one day when we were out with one of your friends on that boat. Yeah. And I brought, like, a bottle of champagne, and you were, like, had just like freshly in AA.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, she's fine. Like she doesn't, and that was so like rude of me to do.
It's not though, because, well, here's the thing, like, alcohol is everywhere.
Sorry.
No. Alcohol is everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, it's everywhere.
I think it's just an education for people who haven't, like me, like I didn't go through it, and I was so naive to think like she's fine, like if she's just not gonna drink it, like it's, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
I didn't think that, oh, like that's super,
But
like
I need exposure because it's around everywhere.
Yeah.
I can't go to dinner and not see people drink. Like I need to.
Okay, well then you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Just kidding.
I did you a favor.
And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is self-awareness. You said that, so we went through the election process last night, which was when everyone gets a new job for a year, right?
Yeah.
So they'll be like a moderator, or they'll bring the snacks or whatever, and you went to be the garbage girl.
I did.
And you said, I thought it was really interesting because you said that you wanted to humble yourself.
Yeah, well...
And I thought that was really, like, you were very acutely self-aware of what you needed.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really rare for anybody, but that really, like, resonated with me.
That's because I knew that because I've been told it many times in meetings.
That you need to be more, that you need to humble yourself?
Yeah. Not just me, but when you are new, you need to take commitments that are humbling and like things you don't want to do. Oh, contrary action is a big part of Alcoholics Anonymous too.
Contrary actions?
Yes. So when you don't want to do something, do it.
Oh God, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, when you don't want to go to a meeting, that's when you have to go.
Wow.
The more than when you want to go.
Ever.
Yeah.
How do you make yourself do it?
You just do it. And then the more you do it, the less you think about doing it. It becomes
Right.
more of a habit.
Routine.
Yeah.
Like brushing your teeth.
It's like brushing your teeth, going to the gym. Same thing. Garbage commitments are something that no one wants to do.
Garbage commitments. Right.
Like everyone wants to do like the glamorous ones, like giving the chips out or being the secretary or whatever, you know. But I know that if I want to keep my sobriety, which is a gift, then I have to do things like pick up the garbage at the end of the meeting.
I just think that, to me, that just gives, as your friend, it just gives me so much, like, optimism to where you're headed. Because if you can...
Thank you.
Be...
I hope so.
If you can, you know, be humbled in that space and really want to do the work. Because it seems like you really do, like, want to do the work.
Yeah, I do. I do. And I think the first year I didn't really want to. I didn't really know what I wanted. I just kind of did what I had to do. Because I got arrested for my DUI, and I knew the last place I wanted to go to was jail.
Right.
So I just did whatever they told me to do, but I didn't really think about what I was doing too much. And this year has been a little harder because I've had more like, I need to do the actual work.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
No, I just think it's so good, and I think a lot of people can... It'll open people's eyes to more about what it's like to struggle with alcoholism.
Yeah, and I hope that if someone's unsure if they are, then they could reach out. Honestly, they can reach out to me if they want. I don't care who you are, what you're like, where you come from, if you know me, if you don't know me. And that's why I post about it on Instagram and Facebook, because it is an anonymous program, and if you want to be anonymous, you can be. But I post about it because I do want people to, if they are struggling and are, you know, there is a lot of shame around it, they can reach out. They know who to reach out to. Thank you.
Thank you to our sponsor, Kettle One, for sponsoring. Just kidding.
Thank you,